recording so that just in case I can't clip this. So I'm going to start somewhat from the beginning. So if you're watching this on the actual live stream, you're going to hear some stuff twice. So skip ahead, yes. But we're going to be looking at the Player's Handbook Playtest 5. This is an interesting Unearthed Arcana, because this is basically the beginnings of We Swear It's Not D&D 1. I didn't like the name D&D 1. I understood what they were going for. The idea now is they're going to unify all the rules into 5th edition generally as the rule set, and then keep building on it from there. So they're kind of, rather than doing a 6th edition, they're just saying, you know what, the 5th edition rules, we like them, we're sticking with them. Here's the kind of, it's almost like just a revamp. But the problem is the problem is power creep. Technically speaking, anything in this document can be used in a regular 5th ed game right now, and it will probably be okay. As they say here, and as with any Unearthed Arcana, there's a chance that something's going to be overpowered or underpowered. That's just the nature of it. That's what we got. And that's fine. But their goal here, and this is why I say this isn't necessarily 6th edition, and I see why, even though it's a little wonky to be putting out a second 5e, if you own, say, Curse of Strahd, you should be able to take characters from this new stuff and still play that module. They might re-release those updated kind of thing. I could see them double dipping on a few things like that. As we all know, these companies like money, so that is a possibility. But I don't know. I don't know what we'll see happening there. So we'll hopefully be pleasantly surprised with how accurate some of this stuff slots in perfectly works. Be aware, you cannot, and I can understand why, you cannot make a character using both sets of books, right? If I make a warlock from 5.0, cool. If I make a warlock from 5.1, or whatever you want to call this, 5.5, let's go 5.5. If I make a warlock from 5.5, technically speaking, they can both exist in the same game without, assuming they balance this power level properly, they both should be able to exist without any major rule changes, etc. However, if I make a 5.0 warlock, I cannot pull any class features from the 5.5 warlock, or I probably will break the game. Yeah, so keep some of that stuff in mind when you go to do this stuff. Yeah, and like I said earlier on the live stream, but won't be in the YouTube video, the biggest problem you're going to run into is power creep. Power creep has been an ongoing issue in 5th edition in general, so they can't really reduce the power level of what they're putting out now, because a 5.0 warlock pulling class features from all the books that exist in that rendition of 5th ed, it's going to probably be more powerful in some respects than these revamps, unless they up the power level of the revamp versions, right? There's going to be a lot of a balancing act going that as a DMs we're just going to have to live with, but as players you kind of got to pick and choose then which books you want to pull from, if you already have books, stuff like that. Hopefully, if their word is true, you should, if you've already got a character in mind and you're built out of the books you already currently own, and you're, DM's like, well, I'm going to be using stuff from the new stuff, it should be compatible. You should be able to do it. Now, the first thing that I noticed, so they do say here there's going to be some rules changes. That intrigues me, but I don't know how big those are. They have put out 5 of the classes in this with some new boons and feats, some new spells, and then the weapon changes, which is where I left off previously. So the first thing that caught my eye, now this is my first time actually really looking at this document. I saw somebody else look through a bit of stuff, but I haven't really delved into it myself yet. But the first thing that I noticed is now they are putting on this mastery property that they're going to talk about later. But then I saw short swords have been moved to martial. And at first I was confused by that. And then I opened up this here and I started to notice something. So that actually kind of makes sense to move short swords. Although, well, they're on return to be. They must have moved it in maybe a different edition, because on at least Roll20 Compendium here, they're listed as martial. But the thing is, when it comes to them, they have some definite advantages in that they have both finesse and light. So that made them superior to a lot of choices on the simple list, right? Why would you ever take, unless you specifically needed bludgeoning for something, why would you take a mace over a short sword? It just never made sense to take a mace over a short sword. The sickles, they're light, but they suck. So why would you take that? Unless your class can't come with a short sword, right? Like it's like, yeah, no, you don't get one in your starting gear. You wouldn't want to do that. Right, I usually go with quarterstaff personally. 9 times out of 10, I prefer that. So we got our versatile there. For casters and stuff who can only use simple weapons, I'm a big fan of quarterstaffs. But yeah, I guess at some point they must have moved short swords. I did not know that, but it makes sense to have them in martial because they do offer distinct benefits over a lot of these here. The net, never used one or seen a character use one, but I guess they've moved it into adventuring gear instead of weaponry. Tridents, cool, I guess. D6 to a D8, versatile. Again, I don't know too many players who use them, but upping it to a D8, that might change. Because what have we got right now that is a martial. So yeah, they were a D6. They could be thrown or used as versatile. I could see not wanting to make them a D8 with the thrown property in there to try and keep them more in line with like a javelin. But yeah, it may put them to a D8. Keep them up with something like a Warhammer. That happens to be able to be thrown, right? That kind of thing. I dig that. I can live with that. And yeah, that's fine. Lance, has the heavy and two-handed properties rather than special. Heavy. Small creatures take disadvantage on attack rolls with heavy weapons. Okay, so small creatures can't use them anymore. Attack die changed. Okay, so it had a special property before that messed with its rolls, so now it's... Yeah, okay. Now, I have a lance on my character. Now, is it special weapons? Yeah, because the... wait, it gets disadvantage? Maybe this is something I need to know. I have a lance on my paladin. You have disadvantage when you use a lance that's within 5 feet of you. I mean, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, okay. So they've changed that so it doesn't get disadvantage within 5 feet, but does less damage overall. That's unfortunate. However, as long as they keep... Because the big thing I liked on it is that it was one-handed while mounted. It's the only reason I use mine is I am a dueler or duelist fighting style on my paladin, so I use it when I'm mounted. But that does make sense. I did like this flavor. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm not heartbroken about this change. I think it makes it less unique and useful. But maybe I'm missing something. War pick, versatile, cool. This caught my eye earlier when I was because this was about where I stopped and realized I didn't hit record. They moved muskets and pistols to the standard table. And at first, that seems really out of the blue to just say, "Hey, firearms are just legal now in the game." But they also say, as always, DM oversees what is available. So if you're a DM and you're making a game that doesn't allow firearms, I could see this creating a bit of contention at a table. If I am making a character and I am told, like, yeah, anything from the player's handbook is fine, because why wouldn't it be? And then I build a character who's relying on firearms, and my DM's like, well, oh no, I didn't put that in my world, right? They're not, industrious. Like, they're not at that level of technology yet in this world. Yeah, having that just available is a problem, but because then all of a sudden you have to tell your players no, and it's always better to be able to tell your players. It's better to have your players ask you for something than for you to have to say no. So before, when they were in the Dungeon Master Guide, I could allow it. Firearms exist in, I think, all of the games that I DM, but it's not by default. So having it on as default and then the Dungeon Master has to take it away, kind of, I don't know if I 100% agree to that. I would even like them to maybe add an asterisk of firearms are often not available in fantasy games, so consult your DM before making this choice, right? Of something. But, ink and paper cost money, so I have my doubts. Yeah, although it is nice to just have it available to the players so they don't have to ask me for reference on the damage dice and ranges and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm at odds there. Light property now appears in the weapon properties section rather than in the glossary. Okay. Probably a good choice. Thrown property now allows you to draw a weapon at the start of your range attack. That is awesome. I love this change. This change here is actually really good. If I'm remembering my 5e rules correctly, because I've been playing a bit of Pathfinder recently, and it has messed with my player brain. You have to, or you can put a weapon away, or you can draw a weapon as part of your attack normally. So this makes it sound like I'd be able to, like, sheath my sword and then quickly throw a dagger. I would be curious. Thrown property allows you to draw a weapon as part of the ranged attack. So does that mean if I have a dagger in my hand and I throw it, as part of that attack, I can draw my sword? Because that's another way I could read that. Because it doesn't specifically, and specifics matter, all right? This is getting a little semantic, but they really do matter. It's draw a weapon, not the weapon, right? It's not the weapon that you are throwing necessarily. So that could also work really well of I throw this dagger, and because as part of your attack, I think you can usually draw your weapon. It's putting it away and drawing and stuff on the same turn that messes with things. So if you throw your thrown weapon, draw your sword, and now you're ready if an opportunity attack or something comes in. Or I throw my dagger, and as part of my attack action, I get 2 attacks. So I draw another one and throw it. Or I throw a dagger, I draw my sword, and I attack with my sword. That change, that's one of those things as a DM, I probably would just normally allow stuff like that of like, oh, it's my turn. I want to throw 2 daggers. Well, technically, you can only draw one. Right? No, okay. Throw your 2 daggers. So I think this. Yeah, I like this change. I just don't know how much it actually changes. I'd have to go and actually read up on that, because I might just be letting a bunch of things slide in my game. But that's cool because it lines it up kind of with how I would end up playing that. Then we get to the weapons table. Costs that barely ever matter unless it's a thrown weapon. Simple weapons. Yeah, the thrown. That's cool. Yeah, having light in the properties in the table, I think, makes things easier to read for that, which is kind of nice because I think it would be a property. I think it mostly affects dual wielding more so than anything else, but I could be wrong if I'm forgetting something random. Range, ammunition, short bow, 2-handed, yeah, makes sense. Sling. You know, after watching the D&D movie, I kind of want this sling to be usable, because seeing it used in a cool, unique way was actually cool. So I'd like to see that. We'll see. I may start putting more powerful versions of it. The trick is that it is one-handed, so you got to keep it balanced with like a short bow that's 2-handed. So I could see making maybe a martial version of a sling, but anyway, that's not a change. Like I said, anything that's mentioned up here they've already explained, which is kind of cool. I might have even gone with the, hey, we're going to underline changes, but them actually spelling them out, I think, makes things a bit less, whereas Waldo. Weapon properties. Light, when you make a attack action on your turn, attack with a light weapon, you can make 1 extra bonus action attack later on the same turn. That extra attack must be made with a different light weapon. You yeah, so that's dual wielding. Though, again, with thrown now, attack your one hand dagger and the other. Yeah, I could see if you have a shield, say, and you only have one hand, and you attack when you use the attack action on your turn with a light weapon, you can make 1 extra attack as a bonus action later on the same turn. The extra attack must be, and I do love the later on the same turn. So you can like stab something, move, and then stab something. It's not part of the same action. That's kind of nice. But which again, it might have been in the original description. This might be the original description. But what intrigues me here now is with the thrown change. If a weapon has the thrown property, you can throw it. Make a range. If the weapon is the melee weapon, you can use the same ability modifier. Yeah. I think so, because it must be a different light weapon. You couldn't stab someone and then throw it. Again, I'd probably let that slide. But rules as written here now, I can throw a dagger and then throw a second dagger as a bonus action. Yeah, I'd have to see. Is this the same as the old light description? Proficiencies, finesse, light. Okay, so I think there's like a dual wielding chapter, or not chapter, but like paragraph in the book, if my memory serves, where now they're just putting it as part of the light property, which then clarifies things a bit, because dual wielding has always kind of sucked, and it's always kind of had strangely like well, for better or worse, a dedicated kind of thing in the player's handbook, if my memory serves. So having it now where just this paragraph on light actually kind of solves the problem. Yeah, and then you can use whichever. You don't add your strength to the strength or dex to the damage, unless the modifier is negative. I don't know if I've seen that before. I can't remember if that was in the dual wielding or not. Because there's also the other annoyance was that there was a dual wielding fighting style or dual wielder or something, and then there was dual wielding in this clarifies a lot of things, or not even just clarifies it, but combines a few things together just to make it a bit easier. I like that. Changing this to light rather than here's how to dual wield, I think is actually a really good move. Without having read the player's handbook in a while for dual wielding, so. And then the fact combined with it now that throw lets you draw the weapon, because I can't. It's been so long since I've actually had to look up the rules of drawing a weapon, but yeah, you would be able to throw a weapon and then attack, or in a lot of cases, if you have I'd be curious. Okay, I'm just looking up here again. I think in the past you could use a light weapon as an offhand, but then you could use your main hand as a heavier weapon, like just not heavy, but like a regular one. Actually, that's actually something I will have to check. But yeah, throwing now, being able to draw it as part of it. Again, I don't know if that actually changes anything overly. I think it just clarifies the text a bit, which is nice. Now, the mastery properties, as shown, only by a character who has a feature such as weapon mastery that unlocks property for the character. Here are descriptions of each mastery property. If a game feature lets you replace a weapon mastery property with another one, the weapon must meet any prerequisites. Okay. Here's the problem I have with weapon masteries. I've always had this problem with weapon masteries, going right back to like Diablo 2. You take sword mastery, mace mastery, polearm mastery, like all the different. Although I think polearm mastery might be. No, I think there was. You can see my Diablo 2 icons probably in the background. I can't remember all the masteries, but you'd have to kind of pick one and commit, which sucked for a game with RNG. If I was playing in a random game, where, when I say random, I don't mean just with random people, blah, blah, blah. I mean where like the loot is randomized, and I just have no idea what could ever possibly drop or be found in stores, etc. There's nothing worse than, okay, I took the mastery cleave, and then, but I found a really, really great weapon that has sap, right? So depending on how they are integrating these, it could be really cool or it could be really terrible. I don't know. So let's take a look. Needs the prerequisite, etc. Cleave. has to be a melee weapon with a heavy property. Okay. If you hit a creature with a melee attack using this weapon, you can make the attack roll. You can make an attack roll with the weapon against a second creature within 5 feet of the first, also within your reach. Okay, that's important. On hit, they take the weapon's damage, but you don't add your modifier. Unless the modifier is negative. That's the second time I've seen this come up. I don't remember seeing that in the player's handbook previously, but I do like that clarification because it could be a case of this was there and I don't remember it, but that's also a problem. So having it there is nice. You make this extra attack only once per turn. That's not too bad. Here's the only thing that gives us some stuff. This is the same problem I run into with the you can only do this once per turn as a rogue. So, okay, I'm just clarifying it in my head before saying it out loud. I believe for if you make a attack of opportunity, so something tries to run, you swipe at it, and you go to use cleave. You can only do that if you haven't used cleave during your turn, versus it resets at the beginning of your next turn. So, yeah. I do like that you can make, so if you wanted to save this for attack of opportunity. The only thing I'd be curious of is if I have, and they might clarify this later on, let's say I am a, because it doesn't say as part of your attack action is the thing. That is, yeah. And here's why that's important. If I have Sentinel, have I now dropped 2 creatures' speed to 0 if I hit? That's what I want to know. Because that could make... It could be a broken, we did not intend for that interaction, and that this was supposed to be used as part of your intentional action, in which case they should say, similar to light when you take the attack action, right? This doesn't say when you take the attack action. So this could be an attack of opportunity or a bonus attack of some kind. So that's something interesting. Or, I mean, it could also mean that the Sentinel feat might be going away if they don't feel the need to mention that. On the second hit, the second creature takes the weapon's damage, but you don't add ability modifier. So it takes your weapon's damage. Does that include any... I think that would include any spells and stuff you have on the weapon. It's usually the case. All right, so flex requires versatile. So does that mean just every weapon that has versatile has flex? Versatile, flex. Maybe. I do like that they did... flex. Okay. I do like that they gave all of them a mastery, and I wonder if that means then... interesting. So, like, the whip has finesse reach, but slow. This has... A scimitar has finesse light nick, finesse light vex. So you don't get to, like, pick one just because it happens to have... Or, well, let me read here. Each weapon now has a mastery property, as shown in the table. That property is usable if a character who has a feature such as weapon mastery that unlocks the property for the character. So I wonder. Okay, maybe I misunderstood this. Maybe it is you get weapon mastery and then you unlock the mastery for whatever weapon you're wielding. The game feature lets you replace a weapon's mastery property with another. Okay, so if you get a. So, for example, where were those two? Short sword and scimitar, right? Both finesse light. One is Nick, one is Vex. You might have a feature that lets you swap those around. So now you have a scimitar that has Vex or a short sword that has Nick. But it has to have the prerequisite. Okay. I think that's how I'm starting to understand things a little more. It would be. I think I need to find the actual weapon mastery feature or feat to know exactly the gain. I'm really hoping it's not weapon mastery slow, so that now I can use that, but only when I'm using weapons that happen to have slow. But we'll see. Flex, when you hit with a melee weapon using this weapon, you deal its versatile damage even if you're wielding it in one hand. That is really cool. Yeah. I wonder if that is why. Oh no, because the lance isn't versatile. You can just hold it in one hand. Okay. And it was a little overpowered at a D12, I'll be honest. That's why I went for it. All right. Gray's melee weapon. So it has to be a melee weapon with a heavy property. So that's good to know. All right. If you attack roll with this weapon misses a creature, you can deal damage to that creature equal to the ability modifier that you used to me. Oh, okay. Oh, and then they specifically mention this is good. This is why it's always important for them to make these distinctions. Because remember before it was like, oh, would this cleave? And I worked through it in my head, and yeah, like if I was doing, if I had like a D4 radiant from like a paladin thing, I would add it. I would be curious to know if things like, well, because maybe the improved divine smite and things like that are going to be changing to work better with stuff like this. But I know when I make a smite, it would be targeted at one of the creatures. But would improved divine smite hit both? Anyway, but Gray's specifically mentions it cannot be increased in any way other than the ability modifier. So certain spells and things that add an extra bit of fire damage or things like that, they do not work with that. Good clarification. Nick, light property required. When you make extra attack with a light property, you can make it as you can still make this. Okay, so this is cool. This starts to make dual wielding better. Because one of the problems with dual wielding is you use your attack action, you hit with your main weapon, use your bonus action, you hit with your offhand, and now you've used your action and your bonus action. In this case, if you have the weapon mastery, you can make an attack with your main hand, make an attack with your offhand, and that is part of your attack still. You have not used your bonus action. You still can't then, and that's why they specify, you can't make another light attack. But that does, like for rogues, this can be really good, especially for thrown rogue stuff. Or just in general, actually. Because rogues need their bonus action a lot, right? It's not even a case of, yeah, this is really good. that is a great change or addition. I guess it's not even a change. I'm hoping this means that these weapon mastery things are available to most martial classes, similar to fighting styles. That's my hope. I haven't made it to the classes yet, so we shall see. And I've only seen, I think I watched somebody go through Warlock. So that's been my only basis for knowing what the heck's going on here. But I like it. I think that's really good. The other thing I'd be curious about, this is my speculation, because again, I haven't read further than this, so maybe I'll be wrong and somebody will correct me, or I will correct myself when I get there. These strike me as getting rid of some of the Tasha's feats that were a bit overpowered, but also specializing, right? Where you would take what were they? There was a bunch of them. Tasha's feats. Oh, 15 feats. Thanks, Screen Rant. Yeah, like Crusher, for example. Bonus grants a bonus to Strength or Constitution. Once per turn, a bludgeoning attack can move an enemy up to 5 feet within size restrictions. Also, critical hits also grant advantage. That's worded strange. But yeah, so like this is, you had to use a bludgeoning weapon, right? So it forced you to use a specific type of weapon. I wonder if that is what they're going to be, like if this is going to be an addition to that type of thing, where now you have specialization on specialization and they just keep stacking, or are they streamlining things and that you take a mastery and you can take topple, you can take sap, or do you get all of the masteries because you are a master with weapons, so you unlock whatever feature the weapon happens to have. I'm gonna scroll back up. Do we have, hey, fighter is in here. All right, I may have to skip ahead to fighter. Well, in a moment, let's just look at the rest of these. So push, if you hit a creature with this weapon, you can push it up to 10 feet from you if it is no more than one size larger than you, which is good. That means that you can push a large creature. It does say up to 10 feet. I wonder if you can decide to move it 5 then, because it says up to 10 feet. Yeah, in the obviously then they're also meaning like, oh, there's a wall there. Yeah, you can't move them just clip them through the scenery kind of thing is what I think they're trying to say there. But I think it also means you can decide to move them back 5 feet, which also makes that more versatile. So say you have Cloud of Daggers going, or a like, what's the cleric one, Spirit Guardians, and you need to knock them into it, but you don't want to knock them directly next to the cleric or something like that. Being able to knock them just 5 feet would be useful. Sap, if you hit a creature with this weapon, creature has disadvantage on the next attack roll before the start of your next turn. Cool. Okay. Overall, good. I think some of the other ones might be more useful, but at the same time, for wait a second. Okay. Important point of note. So cleave, you can make this extra attack only once per turn. Flex doesn't have a limitation. Push doesn't have a limitation. Okay, so you can use a bunch of these more than once per turn. Specifically with Nick, it makes sense to limit it to, you can use this extra attack only once per turn, because it's opening up your bonus action. But Sap could be really interesting. Because Now, what has it? All right, so like a flail, for instance. Most people wouldn't bother taking a flail. It just has a big blank for properties. Like, why would you take a flail over a battle axe that is versatile, or um, a bunch of these other options? Like, and I'm seeing here, yeah, Morningstar has sap and is blank as well. Yes. I think those are the two main ones, at least here, that have it. And I did not see it. And then the mace has it. So it's like winding them. Okay. If you hit a creature with this weapon, that creature has disadvantage on its next attack. Yeah, I could see a fighter doing like 3 attacks against 3 enemies to give them all disadvantage on their next attack, which would encourage them to spread the damage out rather than to focus it on one creature. That's really cool. The only thing I don't like particularly, it says no other properties. So that means if you do have a thing that lets you change, if a game feature lets you replace a weapon's mastery, you can just make it sap, which I think is a problem because it's probably the most powerful of a lot of these. I mean, push, really good because positioning, depending, like especially if you're playing on a grid, like if you're doing theater of the mind, push is terrible because once every 2 years you'll push something off a cliff, which is a really good time, don't get me wrong, but Nick I think is really good. Cleave is just extra damage. So again, if you have something that lets you add extra damage to that Cleave's attack, right? Like say you have improved divine smite, so when you hit something with a weapon, it adds a D10 or D8. Sorry, Cleave could be really good. It's like you throw a bunch of buffs on your weapon so that every time you hit with it, it does a bunch of cool things. It is a good thing that Nick is specifically for light weapons and prerequisite, but because SAP has no properties, that means generally speaking, if you want to use SAP, which I think could be, especially in terms of like a debuff situation, yeah, like Morningstar, Flail, this kind of stuff, you grab one of those, you just start knocking everything to be at disadvantage. But then you start with something that has, say, Cleave, and then as you use the feature that lets you change the property, you turn it to sap because anything can be. That's the only thing that comes to my mind that could be exploited here. But even then, I don't know if it's really an exploit because it's changing one buff for another is fine. It's stacking things on top of each other tend to be a bit of a bigger problem. But that's really cool. I like that. Like I said, it's more of like I'm winding you, so you're, yeah. Slow. If you hit a creature with this weapon, reduce its speed by 10 feet until the start of the next turn. If you hit the creature more than once with this property, the speed reduction doesn't exceed 10 feet. Okay, so 2 crucial things here. One, you can, similar to SAP, you can hit more than one creature with this, but you can't do the effect on the same creature, which is a good way of clarifying that. That's what they're getting at here. But if you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to the creature, that's important because if a creature has, say, immunity to whatever damage type you just hit it with, then it can't be slowed by it, which is good. Yeah, that is actually that is actually good. Now, SAP doesn't actually have that. It doesn't have the and deal damage. I think that's an important distinction. I would like to see that under SAP, so that something that has a damage threshold, if that's going to be a thing, which it might be more of a thing now when they're mentioning the if you deal damage to it specifically on this one, but we'll see. Yeah. Topple. If you hit a creature with this weapon, you can force the creature to make a con save. 8 plus proficiency plus the ability that you used. Okay. Yeah, and you basically knock them over. This is the first one that has a DC. I do like that it is basically spellcaster modifier, but for like a fighter. Which anytime you're adding a weapon property and stuff, I've always had a hard time. How do I set the DC for, like, here's this dagger that does a thing? How do I set the DC for it so that it isn't too terrible? And if you're a DM, you're ever trying to figure that out, make sure you have proficiency to whatever the item is, because then as they level, the DC at least goes up, even if it becomes less and less useful in some ways. The DC goes up, so at least it doesn't. At least it doesn't become completely irrelevant. Vex. If you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to the creature, advantage on your next attack roll against that creature before the end of your next turn. Okay. So ammunition, finesse, or light. Or being key there. So it has to have one. I'm assuming that means it has to have one of the three. Ugh, English. I say that as somebody who only speaks English, but I was just trying to clarify in my head if it had to have ammunition, but then could have finesse or light. But it sounds like it can have ammunition, finesse, or light. This, again, as long as they're not restructuring the rogue too much, this is insanely good. This is very, very useful, and gives rogues a new way to grant themselves advantage, and it's before the end of your next turn, right? They added, what was it? It's not sharpshooter. Sharpshooter is a feat. It's Deadeye or Steady Aim or something like that, where you can sacrifice your movement, so you have none, and then you get advantage on your next attack. But if you've moved already and then you go to attack and you're like, oh, shoot, I forgot about, right? That can kind of suck. So, yeah. Now, rogues generally don't have a second attack. However, if you're a throwing rogue, you can throw 2 daggers, and if you hit with your first one, you have advantage on the second one. So that is actually really good for, like, a ranged rogue. And again, it gives more... They're really opening up the doors to throwers from everything I've seen here, which is really good. I love the idea of I'm going to hurl this thing at you. But I did find in 5th ed, it was just always it was always a better option to grab a bow or a crossbow or a hand crossbow, right? It was just any of the above will be better than a thrown weapon, because they tend to have really, really low ranges. And you do more damage with the, like a longbow or something like that, depending on if you have access to one. So this one having finesse or light, if you have Vex on, I'm just curious now, which one did they give stock old daggers to? Or give 2 daggers, rather. So daggers get nick inherently. Darts get Vex, which again, they've opened up the doors to, like, yeah, there's a distinction between the two. On top of the fact that darts also cost 5 silver each. That's cool. I could see throwing becoming more and more useful, because, you throw 2 because as part of the throne is you don't have to have it drawn, right? You can go full Diego from Umbrella Academy and just have, like, a chest covered in these throwing daggers and stuff, which that's what I'm trying to make in a Pathfinder game right now. So that's sweet. Yeah, like I think they've opened up the doors a bit to making dual wielding better and throwing better. Adventurer gear, we'll look at that in a second. I just want to kind of close out on the weapon side of things, because, ooh boy, I like that. yeah, everything about that I like these in as long as again the masteries aren't too prohibiting. I could be wrong as to how they're implementing them. I'm not that far yet, but I guess we'll find out. Okay, so now we're at the spells section in here. Now I am. Oh, actually. Oh boy, there's a lot of stuff. I am going to dip ahead to fighter quick here. Actually, I can just go Control F. Mastery. Mastery, 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 mastery. Okay, where am I now? Feat. Mastery property. You train with weapons to allow you to use the mastery property of one kind of simple or martial weapon of your choice, provided your proficiency. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can change the kind of weapon you chose to another eligible kind. Okay. That instantly. Yeah. Instantly makes me happy here. Weapon master. Prerequisites, 4th plus level. Yeah, so this is are these, am I in the feat section? Yes. Okay, so there's a feat that just lets you do it. That's good. Barbarian has 2 weapon masteries to start. And then that grows. Okay. And then I'm assuming fighter is, yeah, they start with more and they get up to 5. Now, is the, okay, I need to read this now. Creating a fighter, armor training, fighting style, defense, or you gain fight. So there's a fighting style feat. Oh, I'll get into this when I'm looking at them. First level weapon. You train with the weapons. Allow you to use the mastery property of 3 kinds of simple and martial weapons. Okay. Okay. All right. This clarifies this a bit. I only have one question, and they might answer this somewhere. I'm sure it will be a bit more clear. The problem I'm having is the type of weapon they're mentioning. So it's whenever you do a long rest, you can change the type of, yeah. So like that's sweet because that means you have the mastery stuff. That also means you have them from level 1. That's awesome. I'm assuming. So here's why I'm confuddled right now. I am assuming when they say 3 kinds of simple or martial weapons, it's like you can pick a short sword, a long sword, a mace, etc., rather than a heavy weapon, a light weapon, a reach weapon, right? That kind of thing. Like as you specifically pick a type of weapon, like a hand axe. So I think that means that we will have to, as DMs, if we're making a magic item, we have to pick a base item, right? Like it's not just this whatever you name the axe that you create, you have to say it is a great axe. That is a martial melee weapon, etc. Because usually you have to distinguish, like back in the day, you would just have to say simple or martial, usually. Well, no, because proficient. I'd actually have to double check this. Again, I'm getting my Pathfinder and my 5e rules mixed up a bit, because that is how I live my life. But so because you can change it on a long rest, which tells me that is so you can't just pick up a weapon and instantly have all of the features on it. You have to make sure like you find yourself a long sword, or you're proficient in them, but you're not a master with them at the moment. Take some time to get the feel for them, etc. That's so that, yeah, if you find a weapon, you can't just automatically use all of its features if you haven't been using it. But the fact that it looks like most martial classes, because we've seen barbarian and fighter so far on my searches. Now, is this fighter still? Is that where I'm at? Yeah, 2 extra attacks and all that stuff. Yeah, this is still fighter. Mastery. Choose one kind of property. Replace, yeah, so fighters can like replace the mastery stuff. Wizards obviously don't get that. And back to the beginning. Okay, that clarifies that. I'm going to tack this on to the end of the other video. Yeah,